Welcome to Flamenco Turnkey. I'm Sabina Todaro. I deal with flamenco dances and music of the Arab world and a huge amount of other subjects, ranging from neurology, anatomy, psychology, all the mechanisms of learning processes since 1985. Why did I decide to do this podcast series? Because I realize that we don't have very clear ideas about flamenco in the sense that everyone knows more or less what it is. Everyone has a more or less approximate idea, but people seldom know it deeply. It's a complex, complete, complicated art form that has thousands of incredible and very interesting facets. We always know it very succinctly. If we don't live in Andalusia, it does not belong to our culture of origin. Maybe we have a rough idea. I intend to share my experiences, matured over many years, in fact, of studies, travels, readings, listenings, reflections. Years during which I have not done that annoy all the people I've met, to all the artists I met, and also to the common people, to try to understand flamenco from the point of view of those who live in it daily, making a profession of it. My job is dance teacher. I mainly teach flamenco dance in Milan, Italy. So my job as dance teacher leads me daily to see people, to see human bodies that approach this kind of dance so complex and so tiring. And the most important thing that I've noticed is that this can be a means to help people really express themselves, a way to throw out something that they have inside of them and that otherwise does not come out. I did not stop to repeat the steps that I personally have learned during my travels in Andalusia, but even during my studies in Italy. And I began to investigate more and more deeply the meaning of flamenco from a cultural point of view. I then realized, going a lot to flamenco festivals dedicated to music and not to dance, that the heart of flamenco is the cante, is the singing. Well, you might say, did you really need all this experience? All you had to do was read it in a book. Calmly, I am a person who learns only through experience, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. Books are important to me, but they are an accompaniment that completes my training, which must always be very practical, very on the field. Well, the more I investigated flamenco chanting, and the more I realized that in reality the body behaves in the dance exactly as a good guitarist should behave. What does a good guitarist do? He does not eat the space of the cantaor, of the singer. He listens to him, enjoys his presence, and reminds him of the musical field. He helps him to stay inside the thing he is doing, but at the same time, he puts himself in the background. Well, the baile, the dance, has to be put in the background, because the others are not at my service, or better said, certainly they are, like everything in flamenco, but I have to think of myself as a dancer who is at the service of the person who plays, at the service of the person who sings, something beyond what is my dance. Above all, what I have to do is not to show my skills, show off my technical abilities and throw smoke in the eyes of the spectators, but live my emotions deeply and give them to the audience, whatever my technical level is. I can be a person who can barely move 2 steps. But if in those 2 steps I put all my heart and all my presence and I give myself to the audience, what I'm doing will be wonderful. It will be touching. Well, that's flamenco. Flamenco is something that touches you deeply, and that touches you because what you are dealing with is not a cold technique. It's not a display of skills, but it's the truth. I wonder every day what flamenco wants from us and what we want from it. Why we like it so much, why it fascinates us so much, why an artistic form generated in such a specific place, which is the southern part of Spain. It spread like wildfire all over the 5 continents. Why? It's obvious. It touches deeply human strengths that are common to every human being in the planet. And so this already tells us some interesting things. My view of flamenco is always a very holistic vision. I don't care at all to make the bad copy of a very good dancer or a very good guitarist. I wonder why we study flamenco, we human beings. Why are we passionate about something which incidentally does not even, in the vast majority of cases, belong to our cultural origin? Why? What do we do with this blessed flamenco? I give myself the answer daily. Flamenco is a trick for me. It's a system that forces me to investigate within myself, to understand who I am, and to bring out what I am, and to recognize myself in what I am deeply. And it gives me the greatest privilege to help other people to do the same. And I assure you that seeing a person pull himself out is one of the most wonderful things that can happen to you. It's like seeing a flower blooming. It's like seeing a seed growing. It's a priceless thing, a priceless joy. And flamenco definitely allows us to do this. In some way, flamenco imposes it on us. Not only it asks us, it imposes it on us. Because otherwise you feel like inadequate. And the sense of inadequacy has no reason to be. If I have to do something for my own amusement, because most of the people who study flamenco in the world study it for fun, not because they have to become the first dancer in the world or the first guitarist in the world. They study for fun. So, why do I feel inadequate? Why do I feel uncomfortable? What does flamenco want from me, in short? I ask myself this question. What am I going to do? Why do I have to dance this really hard stuff? Why do I have to play this stuff, which is probably the hardest guitar technique in the world? Why? Flamenco, it's an instrument. It's a means, not a goal. It's a means, a wonderful means. During all the months in which, due to force majeure, let's say COVID, we had to do online lessons. Obviously, none of us at home could really clap our feet, make noise, because the neighbors would not allow it, would not accept it. So, I had to resort to something else that was investigated inside of me. All that flamenco had brought me, had given me over the years. emotions and experiences and overturn it outside of me, offering it exactly as I felt it to my students. Obviously, we had some very strange experiences. Living the music in the body, jumping to improvise. Really, the strangest things. But this helped us, everyone, to understand that in the first place must be the expressive dimension of flamenco, and the technique will come a little bit as a consequence. It will come almost as a gift. If I have a solid body attitude, strong, present, and proud to be here in this moment, my body will behave in such a way as to easily produce the forms of flamenco. My shoulders will follow me, my arms will follow me, and also all the dynamics involving, for example, the hands, which are very complicated in flamenco baile and flamenco dance, will follow the movement of the center of my body with great ease, provided that I am always present, careful to what I'm doing, and that whatever I am doing, I use a wonderful thing called intention. As if I was doing that gesture to communicate it to a physical person just in front of me. This completely changed things. Music can pervade you in this way, even working with recorded music, because of course, obviously, unfortunately, we did not have the chance to have live music when we were at home, which we normally do when we dance in the dance school. And that's how we started more and more every day, every one of us, to feel the pleasure in the body, the pleasure of being alive in this wonderful music. And from here was really born the need, even by many people who maybe were beginners and who did not have great background in flamenco, to deepen it through watching videos, listening to music, reading, and at a certain point I was also asked to give theoretical lessons on flamenco, very similar to these podcasts that I am now composing. So, not the usual things that you can find in all the books that talk about the history of flamenco, about the music of flamenco, flamenco artists, and so on. I always give a very personal vision, and I always invite people to ask themselves questions and to ask themselves why things are as they are, because everything always has a logic, and therefore I invite every person to enter flamenco and look for it within himself and understand why at some point UNESCO has made it an intangible, universal heritage of the humanity. It's not by hazard. It's not because it's so beautiful, because we like it so much, but because it's about human emotions, which are really universal. Flamenco talks to the body. It talks about the body. It talks about the heart. It talks about emotions. It talks about communication. And it talks about things that are very normal in life. Emotions are the bread of life. They are the heart of life. So, it is not necessary to be Andalusian by force, or gypsy even, in order to have emotions. We all have emotions, and our system works around emotions. So, in my research, I had to understand all of my studies in neurology, anatomy, psychology, and I was really involved in neurosciences. So, how our brain works and how it makes everything else work, and feedback work in reverse. Because if my body behaves a certain way, my mind will behave differently than it did before. It will be influenced by the body. So, I can intervene on the mind through the body, as well as on the body through the mind, of course. And this is wonderful. And it always gives us, every day, the dimension of how much flamenco, as a complex and wonderful, complete dance form, is able to provide us with tools of well-being to complete what we are as human beings. All this, I repeat, absolutely regardless on the external results of what we do. I maybe be a very good dancer, or maybe I'm a very poor dancer, very beginner. But if I put my heart into it, this makes a difference. If I put the presence, the intention, that makes the difference. If my eyes look like I am talking to someone, that makes a difference. People learn in this way. When I was teaching in the old way, more technically, let's say, more mechanically, the result was that 1 in 10 people was learning. Well, now all of my students learn. 10 out of 10 people. 10 out of 10. I'm not saying that all 10 of them will become professionals. In fact, probably none. But all 10 will learn to do something important. They will learn to access a wonderful thing called dance. Dance is all that happens when I'm not still. Dance is all that happens while I am living.